When I interviewed Damon Schulman about his album Plausible Cause in July 2017, almost 2 years ago, I had no idea that both he and I would face so many technical difficulties. But it's really been on my heart for the last couple of years that I never released the interview, because Damon really is an artist that's unique and worth your time and attention. Now, if you followed the site for any amount of time, you know that I like to try to release the highest possible quality of video and audio content, but that's just not really an option on this one. Nevertheless, I do hope that you enjoy the interview. It's deep and philosophical, just like most of our other interviews, but it just has been difficult for me technically. Anyway, please enjoy the interview, and please check out Damon's music at damonschulman.bandcamp.com. Thanks.
You scrub and you polish but cannot dig clean. You saw what you thought you would possibly see. The nuances often obscured in the light. There's comfort in thought and you think you are possibly right. You've gone a distance, questioned existence, doubting persistence. Sunrises over landscapes and cities.
Damon Schulman is a musician from the south of England, and he has a new album called Plausible Cause that I heard when it came out, and I think it's just fantastic. It's a very adventurous and fun album, and Damon is here to talk to us about it. Damon, thanks so much for joining.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me, Anthony.
No problem. Can you share with the audience a little about yourself and a little about the album?
Yeah, of course. Well, my name's Damon Schulman, as you said. I am from the south of England, as you said, and I am a musician. I'm a full-time musician. I'm a composer, producer, recording artist, and sometimes live artist as well. I've been playing for a very long time, since I've been playing in bands for, 40 years, since I was about 11. And, obviously I did a bit of schooling in between, but basically, I've been playing for that long. And I started off as a bass player and was writing songs as well during what was called a kind of punk new wave era, and was heavily influenced by, funnily enough, people like my brother and father, who showed me all kinds of different music, and it had a big effect on me. And I could kind of tell from day one, really, I wanted to pursue this quite seriously, music, that is. And so I have all my life. There's been periods where I haven't done it, but now I think it's full on till the end, and I'll keep going and keep going. I just love playing music, basically, and recording more than anything, actually, and writing. So that's basically it. I come from music. You're probably aware I come from a musical family anyway. At least 50%. My mother can't hit a note, but my father was quite a serious musician at one point, and his father also, my grandfather. So there's a tradition, and my uncles as well. There's quite a tradition of playing music in the Schulman family. So why not keep it going? My sons are also musicians, so we just love music. It's it's a huge benefit, I think, to the world. So I want to be part of it.
That's fantastic.
Okay.
Now, can you tell us a little about Plausible Cause?
Plausible Cause. Plausible Cause is, I have to count them off, is my 6th solo album project. And I had a bit of a gap. The last real album I'd done an album with a band about 3 or 4 years before, but the last solo album I did was in 2010, so I was due to do something, and I wanted to give it some kind of concept. Actually, I've just told a lie there. I did an album 2 years before. So that's utter nonsense. I forgot the album I'd done the 2 years before, which was called The Transition Process, which was actually, meant to have some kind of, lean towards a new album, a new kind of concept, and that was Plausible Cause. So basically, I wanted something very definite to focus on, and all I could think of really was I'm not a great person for anniversaries, of birthdays, things like that, being every decade, oh, well done, you've survived and all that kind. But I just sort of kind of broke 50, and I thought, well, let's have a little review of my life. What maybe it's not a bad thing to look at. And what I thought was, what makes me me? And I kind of went through a whole load of back history and things that have happened to me, the way, certain behaviors I may have had throughout my life. I looked at it, I thought, this has got some substance. But sort of midway through that process, I kind of started realizing I was kind of embellishing in my own mind, in my own internal dialogue, embellishing things, which is odd. You might do it over drinks or something, tell how, the fish, the ever-growing fish that you caught. But I started realizing this is a very odd thing, that I'm doing. But everything that I was thinking was true, and plausible, this is where the plausibility comes in, was true to a degree, but not the entire truth. To myself, I found that I was sort of like, I'm not sure I'm being absolutely honest with myself here. This is how I became this, So it kind of broadened out. I thought, well, if I think like this, surely I'm not the only person around that thinks like this. So I started looking at all kinds of, start researching differently. You look at history, how history is reported, differing views of history, politics, current affairs. And you always see there's two sides to something. Well, if there's two sides to something, there's got to be two sides, the way, well, there are two sides to the brain, but there's got to be, variable ways one thinks about oneself. And this is where I was kind of interested in this. And this was before I even got to the music. So this was basically about literally plausibility and what we think causes certain things. I didn't have to be specific about it. I didn't have to focus in on any kind of what I would consider controversial subjects, which I'd kind of want to avoid. Really, I'm not. I don't want to be specific about things. I don't want to. I'm not really here to upset people or anything. I just have a kind of world view of things. Kind of. Hopefully a rounded view. And what I consider, I had intent there, but it's for the listener to decide on the impact, of what occurs. So that what I basically got all these ideas together, and I thought, well, this is about essentially people, myself. So I had to, musically, it had to be kind of accessible. I had planned to kind of go a bit further off the edge, but I felt there had to be some kind of accessibility there and some humor, and just as if you were having a conversation with someone, a long one with, the album's not that long, but, a kind of long conversation with someone, those nights you might have with a friend or something, you go through everything that and you've known people for a long time. And you suddenly point and say, well, that's not true, is it? You could be talking about anything. All of a sudden they're saying stuff, and you suddenly realize, no, I was there. These things aren't true, that you're saying. And it doesn't have to be confrontational or anything. It's not a confrontational issue. It's just a matter of just like, it's funny. The fact that you can have all these ideas, and in a cold kind of sober moment, you suddenly realise, oh no, I'm kind of fooling myself. So that was just interesting to me. And musically, I wanted to kind of convey that through various different means. I mean, I remember I was very grateful for what you said about was it Clarity Phase, which is the second song on the album. That's just an interesting case in point. I wanted to create a very simple idea, a diatonic, simple climb up a scale, and then on the rise, and just a simple idea, just simply play tritones in major sevens on the way down, and then 2/5 whatever at the end, just and I was playing this because everything you play kind of you have to kind of enjoy, and I enjoy sort of messing around. I mean, I can tell you how my process goes with writing music in a second, but with that one, it just amused me, the idea, oh, this seems like something, but it's actually not, and it kind of develops into something a bit kind of it's almost maudlin at one point in the middle, and that was all kind of quite funny to me, really, but also I mean, without wanting to be too dramatic, also quite, in certain places quite, I intended it to be quite touching as well. So, there was all those kinds of things going on. It was all about really sort of like, oh, this is, here's a thought. It seems kind of, fairly valid, whether it be musical or not, but then here's an alternative to that. And you kind of got to be accepting, or hopefully if you're successful as a writer, accepting of both kind of approaches. Does that explain some of it's about?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I have a big bookshelf right behind this camera, and it's full of books about what you're talking about.
Right.
Regarding, we don't ever make decisions rationally at the time. We just make a decision and we rationalize it when looking back.
Yeah.
And we are often embellishing and believing things about ourselves in a positive light because we're our own best friend. Whether we're depressed or not, we often we tend to and we have to survive. We have to believe the best things about ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's been a very interesting journey for myself the last few years of reading and researching. So a lot of the album material does connect with me in that way.
That's great. Yeah. And I absolutely agree with you as well. Well, funnily enough, it's got kind of, when I'm writing and recording, just thinking about anything in particular, I kind of have the opposite kind of approach. I don't read at all. I try and avoid those structures of influence because I want to try and be as purely me as possible to create without wanting to sound pompous, to create the art. Because the art is is for me, I suppose, though I don't have a direct definition on me, is the creation of something that is from the imagination, that can be very much real, is insight. Not insight, but in our sights, and we can develop it through imagination, and hopefully through some skill as well. Because, like I say, with my writing process, I mean, though you haven't asked me the question, I'll volunteer this. How I go about writing generally comes from practice. Believe it or not, I love to practice. I'm a guitarist first. That's my first instrument. Though, as I said, I started on the bass, and that was just merely because of several things. When I was 4, I started on a violin. It was literally stuck into my hands as if, where you've got to play an instrument. And it was all right. It gave me, because I learned some music from that. I had some tuition, and I learned sort of music and a few dots, and and also the idea of how to make sounds that were interesting to me. And and then I played the trumpet. But, but it was all uncomfortable, all that stuff. Never play a trumpet if you're looking for an easy life. Don't play a trumpet. It's physically demanding, and it's just an incredibly hard instrument to play. But that's my father for you. See, you'll do that kind of thing. Well, try that, son. And oh yeah, that it's good. I play it. Okay, Dad. And it's kind of like no, this is really difficult. I don't like this. No, carry on. No, I really. And eventually, it was just the fact that I was kind of I did want to play. Eventually, I think it was a guitar originally was placed in my hands, and then I kind of learned a few things. But it was my Uncle Ray, funny enough, who just try him on the bass, and he was a bass player, and so I did, and I did, and I ended up being recruited into my brother's punk band, who were a bunch of like 16, 17-year-old geezers from Portsmouth, and wow, I had a great time at 11, 12. It was amazing. But what was I saying? Yeah, practice. That's where most of my ideas musically come from. It's like delving into. I'm interested in the whole process of music. I think it's a fascinating thing. I think it's fascinating that humans have created this amazing, complex language that has so many variations from in a Western point of view, 12 notes, and you just think, wow, this is unbelievable, the combinations and the various different kinds of methods you can go around things. And you could make it the most complex thing in the world and the simplest thing in the world, and vice versa, and through juxtaposition, actually, and communicate with people, sometimes without a single word. And that's, to me, is fascinating. I dive into that, and I use that in my practice, and from practice usually comes composition, and that's how it happens, and that's how Plausible Cause was developed as well. But also through memory, a lot of ideas, through memory influences. I'm deeply, sometimes burdened, but deeply influenced by certain musicians and certain sounds as well. And it's sometimes the most obvious, if you like, popular music that I'm interested in, but also at the other end of the scale, the weirdest music, if you like, So and it all, I think I've been told anyway, it does kind of come to fruition. Through my compositions, you can hear those influences. You wouldn't necessarily know exactly what they are, but it's kind of, and this is not contrived in any way. This has happened, over a period of years. I used to just write songs, like we all do, write a song, and then I realised that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to be more interested. I'm very much I kind of like the autodidactic process of just teaching yourself how to and trying to educate yourself, trying to push yourself, and in which case you have to be curious. I'm a very curious person, investigative, and try and look at those intriguing little passages that are kind of dark and unknown to you, and go and research, go and have a look at them, go and investigate. And I think that's how you move on. Sometimes you reach a dead end, but other times you kind of these tributaries really have gold at the bottom of them, so, or at the end of them, so that's what I do, and Plausible Cause was like that. There are different styles in there, and the way I structured the from song I don't say song generally, I always say piece. I don't know why. Is that snobby? It sounds snobby, doesn't it? But like, from 1 to 7, you'll find, if you listen, the styles kind of, this was my intent anyway. You know what I said about intent and impact. Maybe I didn't create the right impact, but the intent was, to start with a kind of a dissonance, a kind of complex. The lyric of the first piece is quite straightforward and simple, and it's just about confusion, and it's kind of a general observation of what actually people I talked to kept on sort of say, well, I don't know what it's all about, that kind of, that kind of bar time kind of philosophy, it's like, they don't know anything yet, go on to tell you everything about what they think they know, certain people, so there was a kind of like confusion. And it always leaves me, those kind of conversations leave me perplexed. I'm sort of like, well, I definitely don't know anything then. Having spoken to you, I know even less. So I have those kinds of conversations which are confusing to me. So there was, you have this opening kind of salvo of, which is basically like a flat 5 arpeggio, basically, going up and down with just a minor 7 arpeggio, and it sounded interesting to me while I was playing it. And like I say, that just came from practicing, and I kind of wanted to build something up for this kind of what is a fairly facile lyrical idea. It's kind of a bit daft, really. I don't know what it's all about. Just saying that, and so I thought there was an interesting contrast there, and bit by bit, I kind of that unravels, because that's kind of quite jerky, that first quirky, the first piece, and there's more fluency, and in fact by the end you've basically almost got straight rock and roll. I mean, track number 4 it could sound potentially, I suppose, a bit like a bit balladery. It's a bit kind of a bit of a love song, sounds like, but it's a bit of an acerbic lyric in there. And a bit kind of self-pitying, actually, in certain respects. But like that is basically based on my love. It's not a tribute or to my love of things like certain old jazz standards and things like that. But it's a kind of nod to it, and how they, in their sentimental, syrupy way, they really do have some impact. And that's why I wanted it, because that was quite a serious lyric on that. Though, also, as I say, I said self-pitying, but actually it's probably more self-deprecating, because it's not entirely about me. There's just about 2 or 3 lines in there that, you get autobiographical about these things, and so, yeah, and that was what you could consider a very straightforward song. This is called, track 4 was called Honest Man, yeah, and just thinking about that, because I've skipped over 2 there, and I'll go back to them if you like. But like, Honest Man was very. But I want to be sort of earnest. That was the point. Being honest about something. And also, musically, just straightforward. Play this kind of, this 3s, 6s, kind of thing, and which sounded a bit half doo-woppy, half sort of jazzy. And then, of course, they had that middle guitar solo and piano solo. I'm a real hack piano player, by the way. I use my hands. You would have thought a guitarist would be quite adept at this, but terrible. When I solo on a piano, I have to just use my left hand. Ridiculous. It's a sad sight. But and you have the guitar solo as well. So you build up to this kind of. It's almost like if you like, we're talking about rationalising things. It's a sudden rationalisation at the end by the time you get to the track Plausible Cause. But like just explaining, I'm doing it all out of order. This is probably the way it came to me as well. And obviously I never write in sort of this is how it's going to be real time. Oh, this will be track 2. Yeah. But,
you may be rationalising right now. I don't know.
Yeah, rationalising all the time. To go back to the actual the pieces, as I said, with Clarity Phase, that was a definite, kind of. It was almost like an exercise initially, but then became a sort of a genuine kind of attempt to sort of like, see both sides of an argument, and the point was to, the idea, obviously, of course, of saying Clarity Phases. This is, the obvious cliche is like a moment of clarity, isn't it? But like, in fact, it's not. The song doesn't suggest anything about me having a moment of clarity or anyone. In fact, that's what I tend to see. It's all about that kind of, as we were talking about, making an initial decision and then doubting that decision and then saying, well, I might be right or I might be wrong. I'm not really sure about any of this. And that's what sends you into, have awe over people of power as well, that are so assertive and affirmative with their decisions. And of course, they're not really, they're like you and me. They're not really that assertive, but they've got to show that, So that's kind of where that's going to.
Some people end up becoming president like that. So
absolutely. And what can you do about it? You can go and march on the streets if you want, but all I can do is kind of laugh a bit, because what else can you do? Or write music, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to bring up is it takes a special kind of insanity to play every instrument on an album.
Yeah. Well, it's because I have no shame, really. I don't really. I don't mind embarrassing myself. I'll give anything a go. And I've been doing it for a long time, anyway. That kind of thing. I mean, literally, if I'm really honest, first and foremost, I am a guitarist, and that's what I really work on. But I have, in my time, played many different instruments, and once you give, I've seen it. I've encouraged other musicians I play with as well to do this, because if you've got a certain propensity to play music and musical instruments, I believe you can sort of give most things a go. I'll be honest. Drumming on this was written. I use samples anyway, because my setup. This isn't where I record. I have a place out the back of my house. I'm in my house, but just you can't get decent sound with that. So I had to really kind of that was a hell of a research job, because I have very definite ideas of how I want rhythm to work. So you kind of almost have to. I don't write it out on a stave or anything, but I have a definite idea of how it's got to work and or sound, obviously. And that was very difficult to sort that out. But eventually it came together exactly how I wanted it, And also, I work on a budget of sort of between $0 and $10, something like that. If I'm spending $9.50, I'm really stretching it. It could.
There's no album that year.
Yeah, it could be big time. So I have to be very. So I can't go to studios and sort of like say I'll play. I don't mind playing. I'm not a great drummer, but I'll play it. But
So did you play it on is that on the keyboards, or did you program like the MIDI grid, or like what did you do? Because the drums, I was surprised. I was like, wow, the drums sound really good.
Yeah, well, it's because it's Billy Martin playing.
Okay.
It is Billy Martin.
That's great.
It's samples from Billy Martin, all legal, all bought. See, my budget's not that bad really, but it was all taken from his kit.
Okay. They sound really good, and some of the arrangements are great. I was pretty impressed with the way the drums rhythmically fit in and drive some of the songs.
Yeah. I like drums like that. I like it. That's specifically driving, and also that kind of polyrhythmic kind of thing. Working against other.
Yeah. Very, very interesting drum parts. But I have to say the guitar parts. I'm a guitarist too, and
I'll see you play.
Yes. Oh yeah. I'll send you some stuff. But the guitar parts are so adventurous. Like that whole last part of Clarity Fades.
That's how it is.
just so twisty, turny, adventurous, and I was like, this is the most exciting guitar work I've heard in years.
Oh,
Just
that's
because it's just so different, and you're not trying to fit you're not doing anything that's like idiomatic to the guitar. You're playing like a written, interesting part
yeah,
on the guitar.
yeah. Well, they were. I really appreciate you saying that, and thank you very much. But it is that. I mean, it's about that sort of thing is about who I listen to, because yeah, it's interesting you say they were written parts, not improvised. But the people I love who play guitar are improvisers. But but I didn't want to do that for this album. I have done that on recorded pieces, but I don't think it would have worked for where I was wanting guitar solos to be. I wanted the guitars to scream a particular message, whatever that may be, whatever the listener gets from it, and therefore there was a use of certain scales against certain chords that I felt was certainly that it was necessary to write these things down. Mind you, having said that, if you want to take a look at my track recordings, it wasn't 2 takes. You know what I mean? I mean, it was the high risk of like going through a number of bars with certain shapes and certain runs is enormous, and you could be doing something, yeah, I got it. I ain't got it. It's that, so yeah, there was a few, it got into sort of like that 25, 30 take thing, so, but, so what, I just had to do it, set me up for the evening. I was fine. But yeah, I'm really glad you noticed that, because, I thought quite long and hard about that, those things. And like I say, that came from, practice drills and things like that, But as I say, it's that intrigue with what you can do. Also, how far you want to push it. How far do you want to push that dissonance? Or how close do you want to make dissonance and consonance work? How close can you go? At what point is someone saying that is dissonant, and I'm saying no, it's not. That's harmony. So you've got to kind of that's what I'm kind of doing there, and hopefully it worked. It worked for you. That's good enough for me.
Well, I have to say, it's it really works, and it's really interesting, and it goes well beyond what I hear a lot of guitarists doing. I can hear just as someone who's had the nights of like 4 hours of trying to play one part.
Yeah.
I can hear the frustration at times, like coming through.
Oh yeah.
And you're really stretching yourself in certain parts of the album, and I don't say that in a pejorative way. It's like
you're right.
It's really cool to hear someone pushing themselves to their own limit.
Yeah.
And it still works musically, but for a musician who knows about recording, who knows about performance, I can hear that you are really striving.
Yeah.
And I think it's really awesome that you put it out the way that you did. It's a little bit messy at times, but it's like it's just this kind of little universe that stands on its own, that's pretty different from most music that's out there. So that's what I really appreciate about the album.
Well, I really appreciate those observations, because they're correct, and I do this. This is the unfortunately, this is the way either fortunately or unfortunately. I think it's probably unfortunate for me, because that's the reason I'm tight on budget. Is that there gets to a point with me. The striving bit is absolutely right. I got to my 50th year. I don't feel you can just rest on you. I'm not a satisfied guitarist. I'm never happy with what I do. I don't think I'm good enough. So, and particularly when I watch people, my real influences in guitar. First of all, I started. My dad introduced me to people like, give me some time. Robbie Robertson, right? Harmonically, and such tenderness with the guitar. But then it's when I discovered jazz quite early on. When I was about 18, 19. And the first guitarist is Joe Pass, just such a beautiful guitarist, beautiful harmonies, fluid, the chord play, everything about it. It was just fascinating to me. And then of course Wes Montgomery, absolutely heart bleeding stuff, beautiful. And then you've got and then of course later on I started Pat Martino, his ideas. Understand the parental kind of, using parental forms and all that kind of stuff. Talk about pushing you, making your mind work. You think, what's he talking about? Initially, when you don't know, you're saying, what is he talking about? And then, as, there's elucidation, the realization of what these people are talking about all of a sudden. And that's why they play like that. They don't use it every 5 seconds, they're usually doing what most of us understand. But having that in there somewhere is really useful to you. And of course, for me later on, John Scofield, of course, who I adore. I think fabulous guitarist. He can just strike the. He's one of those guitarists. Who plays a note. You think, oh, that's John Scofield. Yeah. But and I love those are the types of guitarists I like. Al Di Meola as well, I suppose, when you want to,
What about Alan Holdsworth?
And also, what, I know a lot of people like Alan Holdsworth, and I appreciate what he does. But you know what? It actually gets to the point of it almost gets scientific. I'm not sure, and I'm not certain that I'm really. I love, actually I love science, but like, I like the approach.
But he's exploring different boundaries than those other guys.
He's doing very much his own thing, and you kind of like sense with someone like that. And unfortunately, the poor guy, he's gone now. But like, you've got to appreciate people like that, because they are doing very much their own thing, and can create very unique sounds. And it's almost like I like him. I guess my confusion comes in when there's emulation of people like that, people who try to be, and I guess that kind of slightly clouds my judgment when I think of people like Alan Holdsworth, because there's, but obviously a great guitarist, but not a great influence on me particularly.
Yeah. So I only brought him up because of the somewhat exotic scales that you're using in some of your solos on the album. Wow. And I was curious.
I'll take that as if I'm being compared to anyone like Alan Holdsworth, I take that as a massive compliment. Blimey,
I would say the note choices, your note choices are just interesting, and so I love it. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know about like you and where to get your music, how do they find out more about you, and what's the best way for them to support you?
I should have written this down somewhere. I tell you what, I used to operate websites and such like, but it was you know it was a complete waste of time business wise. It's a lot of money to do these things. So I literally just run off Bandcamp. I have my Bandcamp site, which is just a standard www.bandcamp. Damon Schulman, whatever. Well, what is it? I don't know.
I'll find it.
Information?
I'll put it in. Yeah, I'll put it in the video.
Find out for me, Anthony. And a Facebook, a Twitter account. That's all I got. No wonder I'm so famous. I can't stop people. They're at my door all the time.
Yeah, the video I just published recently with an artist named Sean Persinger. He wrote a book called Nobody Knows I'm Famous.
That's right. Good luck. Maybe we should get together. You could write a book about me. No one will read it.
Now to